Hey, Hollow Dwellers, welcome back to Jester's Hollow, the only place on the internet where we don't take ourselves seriously and still can learn a few things. Well, not that seriously, stop looking at Eve's ass. Because, let's face it, shall we? We are just idiots on the internet bumbling around to learn a few things and leveling up our pixelated lives. Well, today we are going to learn something very awesome that will blow up your mind. Understanding game design through real historical events. Yeah, I put a historical event section. Well, you must have jumped off of that rooftop from Assassin's Creed games, right? Or probably died umpteenth time to dysentery in Oregon train. Well, I must add one thing. Devs are sneaky and they are good at history lessons. They have been sneaking in historical things in games for years by now. Let me give you a few examples, shall we? We are talking about resource clutches from medieval sieges, stealth tactics from colonial spies, and even the brutal luck of 19th century pioneers. As a little hint, by the end of this video you will see that every boss fight that you ever encountered probably has some kind of a historical impact on them, and a history lessons to be learned in them. Stick around and press that subscribe button only if and only if history with gaming sticks with you. And with that, let's jump in. Actually, let's jump in from the very beginning, the starting of the very roots of gaming. Well, flex your controllers because I'm a virtual PNG tuber, right? Hold up your controllers for me and say wink wink apart from that bad joke. Well, if you are like me, you must have thought that the Pac-Man was the first game ever released, but history has its own cheat codes and we will look into them. Well, as a little hint, history's first Easter egg, no cheat codes, just sheer boredom. Let's rewind the time to a point where there are no maidenless memes or Fortnite dances. Like in 1950s, the dusty dawn of the gaming industry or the gaming itself. Picture this, post-World War II and the world is recovering from bombs and rationing. Scars of Hiroshima and Blitz are fresh, and nations are rushing to build tech that will assure peace or at the very least give better gadgets. And scientists, they're fiddling with computers that are funded by the Cold War paranoia. They were not hobbies, they were born of ashes of wartime innovation. Radar and code-breaking machines from the World War evolved into first digital brains, and one of the first games was OXO in 1950s. Those guys in computer science in this chat or in this video's comments, do you remember ATSEC, that hulking bulking machine at Cambridge? Well, that used to play an interactive tic-tac-toe. That was supposed to be a research, not for fun. The research was that to see the human versus automaton or machine smartness in automated warfare. Just imagine if a professor was thinking to play X and O's on a computer just to see if the Skynet is coming. Brookhaven National Lab, 1958, William Higginbotham builds a tennis for two on an oscilloscope, simulating ball physics to demo tech during atomic phase. He was a physicist who worked on the first atomic bomb, by the way, talking turning swords into plowshares, or at the very least, ping pong paddles. Born from Era's obsession, these were not toys, these were tools. They were born from military training tools in World War II to model trajectory and strategies. Flight simulation trained pilots on dogfights over Pacific Ocean, and now they're bouncing virtual balls. That foundation, it birthed the core mechanics like real-time interaction and scoring system that we take for granted today. But let's not stop there. The 1960s space rush, it cranked up the level even more. Well, you have heard of 3D navigation, right? And also wireframes. Well, it was inspired by NASA's Apollo program, which had wireframe models of moon landing. Remember Sputnik in 57? It made the zero gravity feel epic. Think of how Star Wars in 77 exploded everything, but the roots, it lies there. See, even back then, they were serving entertainment. Without those, I would be probably modding my toaster or analyzing rock paper scissors. But the history gets greedy when it becomes 1970s arcade boom. Remember the space race tension? The Space Invaders in 1978 channeled the same power. fear of the descension of the aliens in a formation mirrors the missile threats of Cold War. And you, my friend, in your lonely throne in the lonely space shuttle, you are blasting your way through aliens like the lone survivor defending his homeland. Devs like Tomohiro Nishikado drew inspiration from World War II and sci-fi paranoia. Remember the Normandy landings in 44, where waves of troops hit the beach under fire? Well, he even took inspiration from that and created difficulty ramps, making the wave-based survival a staple in the history, where waves of attackers wore down the forge over days or weeks. Endless runners like Temple Run, they pulled from ancient Roman chariot races during triumphs, where obstacle dodging and speed were the life or death situation in crowded forums. Imagine Ben Hur but with a joystick, where you're steering the crowd for points. I know it might be different, but the adrenaline rush remains the same. Even medieval bounties, they inspired loot drops in games like RPG games. In 1415, after the Battle of Agincourt, knights claimed the gear and spoils. Just like after you grind a dungeon, you get that legendary weapon, right? Consider recent games like Plague Tales or Wusang or Last of Us. They all echo the 1347 quarantine and social collapse from Black Death. One more click, right? But remember this, when you click that one more try, you are replaying the history itself. And now tell me, does games echo history or not? Yeah, by the way, crashing a chariot in a race is quite fun, right? It's a part of the game. Someone loses, someone wins. But you respawn, right? But for the ancient Romans, not so much. And yeah, also, no one back then would have imagined dying to a pixel invader would turn into a billion-dollar industry. But we will have to hand it to those Cold War eggheads who gave us these games. Otherwise, we'd be still playing board games. It is stunning to see how Cold War's fearful seals turned into a silly cold winter night of chill moments. Like that bomb shelter vibe turned into a cozy co-op night. Well, let's level up to a strategy game, shall we? Where historical events dictate the rules. Let's take Total War series like Rome 2 or Three Kingdoms. They aren't just pretty battles, they are simulations of ancient warfare, pulled from dusty tomes, and the core mechanic, it's about managing your troops and economy. Where Hannibal's Alps crossed the Alps, the ripple from the Punic Wars, 264 to 146 BC. During campaigns, Romans had to manage their logistics, right? Like food rations and troop morale. Rome even went to hostile lands just for the supplies, and if those supplies were overstretched, they will vanish. In-game, if your supply line snaps, your units desert or snap, mirroring how Caesar's legions were nearly mutilated in Gaul from overextension. Oh, trust me, devs do research these events meticulously, using historical texts like Polybius accounts to craft turn-based planning that feels like commanding a real legion. They even build a model for the morale dips from rain-soaked battles like Cannae in 216 BC, where dust blinded the troops. It's no longer a strategy, it's about how empires rise and fall. Elephants in Alps, Hannibal was basically the original overpacker, right? Babe, do we need the whole zoo for a trip? Considering Crusader Kings 3, a dynasty simulator that basically screams Sims meets the Game of Thrones with actual medieval politics. Here are morality choices and alliances that are drawn from Crusades of 1095 and 1291, where King Richard the Lionheart navigated betrayal, marriages, and holy wars. Just like plotting against a rival house to claim the throne, you scheme weddings for land grabs, echoing how Eleanor of Aquitaine's marriage shifted Europe's map in 12th century. One wrong move and your realm crumbles. Echoing 4th Crusade's sack of Constantinople in 1204, where greed fractured alliances. It's a psychology baked in history that shows up power corrupts. So the games essentially force you to play as flawed rulers that are hungry for power and survival. And get this, mechanics like inheritance laws stem from the Magna Carta, 1215, you don't just win, you live the history's chaos and power play. From excommunication that tank your prestige, like Pope Gregory VII's clash with Henry IV in the investiture controversy. Signed, sealed, and delivered. Wait, that's not how throne works, right? Whoops, there goes my entire kingdom to my idiot nephew. Crusader Kings, where family reunions and civil wars, and therapy bills. And don't sleep on Mount and Blade either. It's sandbox warfare pulls from Mongol invasions in 13th century, where Genghis Khan's horse archers used the hit-and-run tactics to conquer Eurasia. In-game cavalry flanking mirrors those steppy strategies. However, teaching you that brute force alone flop against smart maneuvers. Just like in the Battle of Mohi in 1241, where Mongols feigned retreats to lure enemies. You recruit NPCs like historical Khan's master tribes, managing loyalty to avoid revolts. These aren't just fluffs, they are lessons in history, how underdogs sometimes topple an empire. But wrapped in the open world freedom. Let's add Sid Meier's Empire Builder, the civilization, to the mix. It draws from full arc of human history, from Sumerian city-states to Industrial Revolution. Mechanics teach us how tech trees echo the agricultural revolution around 10,000 BC, where farming unlocked population booms and warfare. And wonder why the nukes end the game? Straight from Hiroshima, forcing ethical pauses and progress. Horseback ride sounds cool until it hits traffic. Wait, wrong era. Mount and Blade, Genghis Khan's Uber, but with more arrows and zero surge pricing. Imagine if the devs ignored the historical context of these games, and that would have made these games nothing but button smashers. Instead, thanks to history, every siege engine you launch feels like you're in the Trojan War, or catapults and all. Or the walls of Constantinople falling to Ottoman cannons in 1453. Boom, instant replay value. Shifting to narrative-driven games where history hits heartstrings with controllers and keyboard and mouse. Okay, keyboard and mouse are important. Valiant Heart, The Great War, 2014 is a gut punch. Using World War I 1914 to 1918 as backbone for puzzle adventure mechanics. You play as soldiers in trances, solving riddles tied to events like Battle of Somme, where over 1 million men crashed into mud and gas. The Dogfest quest, inspired by actual war animals carrying messages amidst no man's land's horrors, while repairing vehicles echoes mechanical crews fixing tanks under fire at Vedrum. It's not glorifying war, it's humanizing it, showing how ordinary folks endured shell shocks. What we now call PTSD from constant barrages. Deb poured over letters and diaries from that era, making choices like sharing rations feels like a desperate camaraderie of Christmas true stories in 1914. Enemies played soccer in no man's land, a brief humanity flash amidst horror. Good boy, fetch that grenade. Wait, no. Valiant's Hearts pup is cuter than my last blind date. Then there's Assassin's Creed, the stealth Kingpin series. Odyssey or Valhalla, they drink deep from ancient Greece and Viking raids. Take the Peloponnesian War in 431 to 404 BC. In Odyssey, your Spartan kicks and hidden blade assassinations mirror the real espionage of figures like Alcibiades, who plotted betrayals across city-states. Parkour across Acropolis ruins, that's a nod to how Greek hoplites scaled walls in sieges, blending free-running with philosophical dialogues pulled from Plato's era. Debates on tyranny echoes Athens' democracy experiments, making choices feel timeless. In Valhalla, Viking longship naval combat recreates the Great Heathen Army's invasion of England in 1865 to 1878 AD, where boarding tactics and sealed walls decided the fates at battle like Stamford Bridge. But what shines the most is the moral grey areas. History's assassins weren't heroes, they were tools for power struggles, forcing players to question if end justifies the means, like in the Sicilian expedition failures. The series even nods to Templar Knight classes from Crusades, layering conspiracy like real secret societies. Scale walls in AC, easier than my attempts at adulting. Hidden Blade, more like hidden sanity after my jump. And don't get me started on the haystack landings. Ouch. Whew, heavy stuff. But hey, if World War II taught us anything, it's that even in trenches, good puzzles solves more than bullets. And Ubisoft, I don't know why they changed, but until then, they used to consult to real-life historians for just so that they can keep it real, not for just stabby stab fun. Though, I must admit it, stabbing is half the fun. Eastward, Ghost of Tsushima in 2020, which captures 1274's Mongol invasion of Japan like a haiku in a sword form. Protagonist Jin Sakai's dual stances as stealthy ghost versus honorable samurai stems from the real dilemma during Kublai Khan's fleet landing on Tsushima Island, where traditional Bushido clashed with guerrilla tactics against overwhelming numbers. Archery duels straight from samurai bowmen at the Battle of Komoda Beach, picking off the invaders from the cliffs. Dev studied the kamikaze winds that supposedly sank the Mongol ships, mirroring weather mechanics that can turn the tides in-game. Just like the typhoon that shattered the second invasion in 1281. It's poetic because history's divine winds becomes your stand of tension, blending action with cultural respect. The honor system even critiques feudal rigidity, showing how flexibility won wars, like in the Onion's Wars later samurai ships. And who can forget Orion Trail in 1971? This wagon shift is a time capsule of 19th century American Western expansion, 1830s to 1860s. Hunting buffaloes? That's the perilous buffalo hunts pioneers faced. River crossing with cord and ferry choices echoes how real drownings and wagon wrecks on Platte River, where bad luck meant cholera outbreaks killing thousands. Dysentery as a killer? Spot on! It claimed more lives than bandits during gold rush. Modern versions add psychology. Family morals dips like historical diaries describe despair on endless prairies. You trade at forts like Fort Lamari, mirroring actual bartering for supplies amidst Native American encounters. Though, games has softened the dark side. It's a reminder that expansion wasn't glory, it was great loss and tough calls. Much like ancient Indian philosophies explores dharma and karma like in Crusader Kings, your dynasty's choices ripple like karmic consequences. Betray an ally and it haunts generations. Echoing Bhagavad Gita's dilemmas of duty in war, where Arjuna questions killing kin in the battlefield. Krishna's advice on detest actions, it's like optimizing your strategy tree, act without attachment or outcomes, or race quit the empire. Valiant Hearts' no-win situations force reflection on war's futility, akin to Buddhist views on suffering, dukkha, from historical cycles of conflict. The endless loop of trans stalemates mirrors samsara, the cycle of rebirth, breaking it or suffer endlessly. Psychologically, these mechanics are why we love games, because they let us relive history's tough calls, but safely. Building empathy like simulations of Holocaust in games such as Through the Darkest of Times, where resistance choices mirror 1930s Berlin underground ops. Printing leaflets or smuggling Jews. It stands, drawing from real Anne Frank hiding tactics and White Rose pamphlets. Devs use this for subtle education. After playing, you Google the event and hooked by its intricacy. It's genius because history's lesson stuck when you're hero or the villain. So, what holds for historical context in future? There are lots to think, lots to find, lots to get, right? From Cold War pixels to Mongol horses, history's everywhere in your controller. What historical twist do you want to explore next? Drop it in the comment, smash that like if you're Team History buff gamer, and subscribe to Jester's Hollow for more. See you in the next level. Stay hollow, stay Jesterly.